In today's experiment, you'll synthesize sodium bicarbonate. This is a very common chemical with which you should already be familiar. Go to any grocery store and you'll find pure sodium bicarbonate. You'll find it under its common name of baking soda. It's also found in carpet deodorizers, toothpaste, and effervescent cold and headache remedies. Of course, it's also commonly used as a leavening in baked goods, hence its common name of baking soda. You will synthesize sodium bicarbonate by a classical method called the Solvay process. It's named after the company that originated. It starts out with carbon dioxide, ammonia, and sodium chloride. It's a two-step process in which first the carbon dioxide reacts with ammonia to give ammonium ion and bicarbonate ion, which remain in solution. This is a simple neutralization reaction. Carbon dioxide is slightly acidic, ammonia is slightly basic. The acid and the base react with each other. At this point in the reaction, you will have four different ions in solution. The ammonium ion and the bicarbonate ion, which is formed in this reaction, and also the sodium ion and the chloride ion, which came from the original salt. As this first reaction proceeds, the bicarbonate ion concentration increases. And at some point, the least soluble cation-anion combination will start to precipitate out. That least soluble combination is sodium bicarbonate. The overall reaction then involves the reaction of sodium chloride or salt with ammonia and carbon dioxide in water to give our product sodium bicarbonate. Going back to the grocery store, we find we can buy not only the product, but also the starting materials. Salt, of course, ammonia. Ammonia that we have here in water is just the right concentration for the reaction, and carbon dioxide in water. Now, the amount of carbon dioxide we have in a bottle of seltzer probably won't give us a good yield, but anyhow, it's all there. Now let's turn our attention to actually carrying out this reaction. We'll start by weighing out 17 grams of salt on a triple beam balance. Now, since we'll be weighing the salt on a piece of paper, we don't have to zero the balance first, but we must weigh the paper accurately. We'll put the paper on and then move the rider up the beam here until the beam goes back to zero here. In close-up then, the weight of the paper is 0.88 grams. To weigh out 17 grams of salt, what we'll have to do is add 17 grams to this 0.88. We'll do that by moving the 10 gram weight here to the 10 position, and we'll move the rider up then to 7.88 there. Now we'll add the salt until the beam rises to the zero mark here. That's a little too much, so I'll take a little off. There. At this point, we used our salt to saturate the ammonia solution, and now we're going to filter the ammonia solution into our reactor. To do that, we'll use a piece of filter paper and the funnel, but first we must fold the filter paper. Now, to fold a piece of filter paper to fit one of those funnels, what you do is you fold it in half. Crease that, and then you fold it in half again so you get quarters. At this point, the filter paper is folded into quarters. Then you take one of the quarters and you fold that in half as well. So now this quarter has got a fold which cuts it into eighths. And then you take the opposite quarter and do exactly the same to that. And fold that. So now you have a filter paper which, when you open it up, has a quarter here, and eighths here, and eighths here. And what you do is you just grab the eighths part, and when you open it up, those go against the side. Now you can use the funnel. And we'll take this out, put the funnel in here, put the filter paper in here, hold it, and then we'll pour our solution in here, being careful not to get it over the top of the filter paper. And that's it. That's going to be the filter paper funneling. Now this is the reaction setup then. We have here our solution of salt and ammonia. We will put in this flask dry ice and stopper it tightly. The dry ice will slowly sublime, giving off CO2 gas. The CO2 gas will pass down and bubble in through the solution and then out through the Bunsen valve here. Now, the Bunsen valve has a small slit in it to let out the CO2. That slit must be pointing away from you in some direction where it's not going to be pointing at anybody, because in case some of the solution should, or for some reason or another, bubble up and spurt out there, you don't want that to go into anybody's face. Let's take a closer look at that Bunsen valve now. Here's the Bunsen valve in close-up. Now, this slit opens up when there's an excess of CO2 generated. Before you start then, make sure that this slit is not pointing at anybody and make sure that it is not stuck shut. To start this reaction, you'll add 75 to 100 milliliters of powdered dry ice. Now remember, dry ice is very cold, minus 50 to minus 60 degrees, so keep it off your skin so you don't get a freeze burn. Now to transfer the dry ice, your flask here, you might want to make a funnel out of paper, pour it in, and then stopper the flask and vigorous bubbling should occur. Now remember, you have this clamp here. Now this clamp is just sitting there. It isn't holding anything, but in case something should get blocked in here and the stopper fly off, this clamp will prevent it from flying in somebody's face. The other thing is make sure that the Bunsen valve is pointing away from people, because some of the solution occasionally will spurt out. In case you're wondering why you point the slit of the Bunsen valve away from. After about 10 or 15 minutes, you should start seeing a buildup of sodium bicarbonate on the inside of the gas delivery tube. After about 20 or 30 minutes of bubbling, a precipitate will start to form, and this will get heavier with time. You've got to make sure that the gas inlet tube down here does not get clogged up, otherwise the stoppers will start popping. To clean this out then, you must first remove this stopper, and then you can remove this stopper and clean out this tube system. Here's the end of that gas inlet tube, and as you can see, it is almost completely blocked at this point. You have to wash this out with distilled water. After washing with distilled water, the tube should be cleaned and unblocked again. If you don't clean out the tube, this is what may happen. After another 10 minutes of reaction, you can start cooling the reaction down in ice and water. After about 15 minutes of reaction in the ice bath, you should be ready to work up your product. Now we're ready to isolate the sodium bicarbonate. To do this, we'll use a suction flask and a Buchner funnel. The sodium bicarbonate will be collected in the Buchner funnel using suction. The Buchner funnel has holes in the bottom to allow the liquid to go through. To prevent the solid from coming through, you must also use a piece of filter paper. This filter paper then is put right over those holes, and it must fit snugly in here. We'll start out with by connecting up the vacuum line here. Make sure it's on. Connect it to the suction flask. And we'll put in a piece of filter paper into the Buchner funnel. And we'll wet the filter paper so that it seats properly. We'll push it down until it is seated properly. And now what we'll do is we'll get rid of the little extra water that we put in here. So we'll get rid of that water. And now we can start the filtration itself. We'll reconnect the vacuum line here, make sure it is seated properly. And now we'll take and we'll slurry up the precipitate here so that it's suspended back into solution. And when it is all suspended, we'll just pour it into the funnel. Now there's still some left, we'll get rid of that later. And the filtration. And what we will do is we will take the mother liquor here and we will use that to get the rest of the material out of the tube here. We'll reconnect the vacuum. Mix this up again. There, that's much better. And now we have put all of our sodium bicarbonate into the Buchner funnel. At this point then, when it has sucked itself relatively dry, we'll take a clean piece of filter paper, dry, and put it right on top. And with a small Erlenmeyer flask or a rubber stopper, we will press this down. And this way we will press down any additional water which may still be in the filter cake here. Then we will take out this piece of filter paper. And now we can start the washing procedure. We will wash it with water, and we're using only a little bit, about 6 milliliters, and we'll wash it twice. Now when you wash it, disconnect the suction, put in about half of this water, and spread it out over the sodium bicarbonate. Then let it sit for a few seconds here, 10 or 20 seconds is best, and then reconnect the vacuum. Let it suck itself dry. Press it down again with a clean piece of filter paper. Take the filter paper off. And one last time. Put the suction. Put the rest of this in, spread it out. Make sure it all goes throughout the precipitate here. Attach the suction. Suck it dry. Press it. Remove the paper. And now you will let it dry under vacuum for about 5 minutes. This should get most of the water out of it, and then you can let it sit till next time to dry completely. Now a brief note on filtering. When the suction is complete, if we hear a hissing noise like you're hearing now, I'll go around the edges of the Buchner funnel, pushing down the filter paper to make sure that it is in place. After drying under suction for about 5 minutes, you're ready to take your sodium bicarbonate and put it on a watch glass to dry till next week. To do that then, what you usually do is break apart the Buchner funnel here. They come apart, that is, don't break it. And put it on the watch glass. To do that, just put this down here. Now, if it doesn't come out, this came out automatically, but if it doesn't come out, just take something and tap it a little bit. It usually falls out. If not, you may have to dig it out. But anyhow, once you have it on the watch glass here, make sure that you remove the filter paper. It looks like there isn't any filter paper here, but there actually is that one sheet of filter paper, so make sure you get that off. Or if you have 2 sheets, make sure you get both sheets off. And if there's any little flakes of sodium bicarbonate hanging on the filter paper, you can try and knock them off, but don't dig into the filter paper to get lint into your product. Well, There's your product, and it's all set to dry till next week. Next week, in addition to doing the chromatography experiment, you will grind up your sodium bicarbonate in a mortar and pestle. You're going to quantitatively convert about half a gram of sodium bicarbonate into sodium carbonate. You'll analyze your product for chloride ion impurities by converting them to silver chloride and measuring their cloudiness in the spectrometer. Finally, you'll turn in the rest of your sodium bicarbonate in a neatly labeled sample tube.